Welcome everyone to another segment of CEO at the Gas Pump, and I'm your host, Redtwan Hill. Today, guys, we have a special guest, Dr. Price. Dr. Byron Price is a distinguished professor of public administration at Medgar Evers College, City University of New York, and the former dean of its School of Business. He is renowned for his extensive research on prison privatization, prisoner reentry, and social justice issues. Dr. Price is also the author of Merchandising Prisoners, Who Really Pays for Prison Privatization, and has held esteemed positions such as the Lilly and Nathan Ackerman Chair of Social Justice at Baruch College. Beyond academia, he has served as captain in the United States Army and is currently the CEO of BEP Consulting and the president of the Pan African Chamber of Commerce, where he focuses on fostering economic development across Africa. Dr. Price, nice to have you on. How you doing, brother?
Thank you, brother, here for having me this morning.
Man, the privilege is all mine. So, for the audience, can you give us a brief rundown of who you are and your background?
Yes. Well, I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, although I live in New York City. So obviously, you know, the accent is not New York City. And so, like a lot of other young brothers, I excelled in sports and so forth. And from a single parent home, I never saw my pops till I was 26, but education was my passport. The athletics got me, discovered, but the education has been my passport. That's why I've been able to travel so extensively, but also to rise above my environment and sort of like go about and to become as successful as I am now. It was through my education. As Malcolm X stated that education is the passport. So I've traveled and seen the world, and as you pointed out, I'm a professor of public policy and administration, but also was in the military, and so I'm a Omega Psi Phi, member of Omega Psi Phi, so I'm in the fraternity, so very active in our community and so forth, and just blessed to sort of like be here, brother, and sit down with you to sort of have a great conversation. So that's where I'm from. I'm a Southern boy, but the people of New York always think we so slow, but like I tell them, we gave you your music, your food, your folkways, and your mores, so that means we must be slicker than you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What sport did you play?
I play running back, a football.
Okay.
Play running
All
back,
right.
but I got hurt and I gave it up, man. I was one of those guys that they talk about those 1 in a million injuries. Was that one. I always got that 1 in a million injuries, so I was like, no, it's time
Mhm.
to give it up.
And did you get that injury in high school or was it like in college where
I
you
got it in high school, and then I also when I went for camp that summer, and like July, June, I got hurt again, so I was like, no, that's it. Let me just go on and focus on the books.
Mhm. Is that when you made a pivot to, joining the go into the military?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, because I no longer had the money, to sort of like matriculate to college because you playing sports, so you have scholarships, and so as a result, I went into the reserves to get some funding. And I knew I didn't want to go back to Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up in the Lemoyne Gardens. It's profile on the History Channel. If you look at it, the Lemoyne Gardens, it's profile on the History Channel. It's pretty bad projects, you know. And so at that time, like in the 80s, that was the rise of private prisons. I know we're gonna get into that, but there was a rise of private prisons. And so now make that connection because I remember when I was in the sixth grade, I asked my mother where were all the adult males, and she said, "Baby, most of them are incarcerated." But in like in 80, I think it's 82 or 83, I was in college. That's my second year. I read an article about Corrections Corporation of America, which is now CC, which is the Core Civic now. And
Mhm.
they basically, I read where their stock traded on the stock exchange. So what I thought about that question, I asked my mom. For some reason, I thought about that question. I asked my mother when I was a sixth grader when I read that article. And so I was like, bam, that's what that's about. And so as I began to sort of like, then I became more focused on studying and books to sort of like look at, a lot of the problems. I think one of the things about us when we're young, we don't realize how perceptive we are sometimes. And then I began to sort of piece some of those things that I observed when I was young, when I started to read this stuff about them commoditizing prisoners. You've actually made them a commodity once you start trading on the stock exchange. And so that's how I got into the education space and started to immerse myself in books and knowledge and so forth.
Yes, sir. Wow. Okay. So that's a good segue to, so you had a remarkable journey from serving as a captain in the U.S. Army to becoming a thought leader in the public administration and social justice. How has your military background influenced your work in academia and in policy advocacy?
I think that's a great question as well. But I think one of the things people, and I'm not diminishing the military, but I think one of the things people get the military too much credit about sort of instilling discipline in people. I think the people who are already disciplined that go in there are the ones that easily assimilate. But I think the military reinforces that structure and sort of lets you know that in the sense that you're doing the right thing because they give you that structure that allows you to excel and sort of like promotes. I think let me say it does deserve credit. It builds that discipline you already have, and it also provides you that structure to continue to sort of build and to focus. And so I think the military was great in respect that it broadens your horizon. It opens up your environment. So many of us are just exposed to a limited environment. But when you get into military, you meet diverse people. You get to travel, and as the Berbers of North Africa say, you don't know people until you travel. And so, as a result of the travel and meeting different people from different parts of the world, and beginning to read, all these geopolitical analysis, you begin to have a worldly view as opposed to a sort of a narrow view or myopic view of issues, and then you begin to see how interrelated everything is globally. So you begin, I think, to gain a global perspective and a global appreciation. And one of the other things, it helps you, I think, appreciate news from different sources. Because as you travel, you get to watch news somewhere else, and then you watch yours, and you see how biased news is. And so as a result of that, I think it helps round out a global perspective and it helps you become a global thinker. So you think about policy differently as well. When you begin to sort of make public policy. And one of the reasons why I got into public policy is because we are always on the receiving end of public policy. We're never at the stages where public policy, for the most part, is being formulated. Okay, and so that's why I got into public policy. Of course, we in there, we are part of that space more, but we still don't have as much influence on the policy making process. And so I think it's critical for us to be those that are part of the policy making process as opposed to always being the end users of public policy. So I do think I will give Army credit for sort of helping me grow as a man and providing the environment and the structure to excel, but also providing resources that a lot of our young brothers and sisters go out and have to hustle to get those resources, but they provide an opportunity for us to sort of like take care of our family. And it's not for everyone, but I do think it's a great opportunity because I tell everybody I have my grievances with my country, but they have never overshadowed my opportunities. And so I focus on opportunities, and I think the military gives opportunities, and I think every system has challenges, but I think you just have to have the Constitution to sort of figure out what you want out of the system and design your plan and work your plan. And then I think the military, is a great opportunity to do that. So it helped me to sort of be in the position that I am now.
Yes, sir. As an expert on prison privatization and social justice, What key reforms do you believe are necessary to address the root cause of mass incarceration, especially as they relate to racial and economic disparities?
Well, I think the last thing you said about economics, I think the biggest the reentry and reintegration is an employment problem, is an entrepreneurship problem. Because when you think about economics, most people, a lot of people commit crimes because of the economic condition, and
Mhm.
so and I think that's the biggest thing. And then when you think about the barriers, some states pass laws where you can't get a barber's license if you have a drug conviction, where what I'm gonna cut your hair and it's gonna be drugs and clippers, or I'm gonna get you high. I mean, so
Yeah.
when you think about a policy that sort of so you can't get, I mean, you can't get various licenses. So what does that have to do? How do you get to reintegrate in society when they pass laws where you can't get basic licenses to get a job? And then when you think about it, like if you have a drug conviction, you can't get a Pell Grant to go to college. Okay. And I think some of the they were offering some financial assistance in prison, and people rebel against it, so they cut a lot of that out. But I think that the main issue is the fact that we have to go back to manufacturing, creating manufacturing centers in our own and back in the U.S. to provide livable wages and for people to have jobs. I think that the big problem, like I said, is a jobs problem. Then we had to get rid of a lot of these laws that continue to penalize you once you are released. Yeah, let's say for example, when you're in jail, you have children, and you have to child support arrears keep growing as they should, but they suspend your driver's license while you're incarcerated. So why don't they, as when they exploit your labor when you're in prison, when they pay you 50 cents or 20 cents an hour, well, they should pay you more since they're making $1 billion off these contracts. They should actually pay a minimum wage to those who are incarcerated so they could make restitution to the people that they victimize and pay for child support to their families. But no, they exploit their labor and they contract out their labor. And it's $1 billion industry, exploiting prison labor. And so they should reform they should reform that. So when you think about it, because now you don't have to like use China or Africa or Haiti to sort of like get cheap labor. You got a prison population that provides cheap labor. There's 2 million people or more under the justice system, be it probation, parole, or incarceration, and they
Mhm.
exploit that labor. So I think reform and how prisoners are paid, because I think they should get the minimum wage. Like I said, they should. And so I think that, and I also think about removing these barriers to reintegration. Like when you lose the right to vote, but not in every, in some of the states have begun to take that down. And I think the Citizen Project has done a great job of sort of advocating to sort of remove these barriers. When you come out, you're still penalized. You can't vote. Well, if I've served my time, why am I still penalized? So how do I feel like a citizen when everything is still stacked against me? So I think we need to change those laws. I think they have some second chance acts. And I think they like ban the box. I think policies like that to ban the box. If you check you got a felony, they automatically throw your application. So I think there are a lot of things related to various states. But I think the big issue is that a lot of corporations don't want to pay a livable wage. They want everything cheap, and so they're not into manufacturing anything. Then you think about artificial intelligence, also, and that's gonna wipe out all kind of jobs. So are we gonna
Yeah.
retrain and upcycle people? But I think the last thing when you talk about like education is key. Like a lot of there's this reparations movement that they're not going to give you money for reparation, but I think the reparations argument should be focused on education, where you give them equal education. They get the best teachers, they get the best schools, and they get to go to college. College is far too expensive. College should be brought down so people can sort of like pursue. And then everybody doesn't want to go to college. I remember when I was in high school, they used to have vocational education. So we need to go back to like helping our young people get skills. But
Yeah.
everything is so expensive nowadays that a lot of people can't afford to go to school or even to get skills. I mean, to go to community college to get skills. So I think that we need to sort of take this corporate perspective toward education. So because you're talking about doing all these things for America, but you keep bringing in people, to sort of like deal with these sort of high level jobs because you're not committed to educating your own population. So I think those would be some great reforms.
I would like to probe on something that you was speaking because as I was doing my research as a prime contractor, and FAR Part 8 speaks on the federal source of supply, and then I realized that Unicore was they have priority over all of us, for products specifically, they're number one. Then of course the service ability one has the priority. But could you speak on could you speak on that a little bit? The Unicore utilizing the prisoners as a priority source for the government to fulfill their contracts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting, and I forgot to mention Unicor, but Unicor was founded by the government in either 1933 or 37. It's one of those, and because various states have prison industries, and like I said, the prison industry developed after slavery because there was no prison system until slavery, after slavery, and the prison system was designed to recapture that free labor that they exploited. Because when you had slaves, you didn't need a prison system. You actually had a prison system that was the slaves. So once they get rid of, so then the government had to get in there because when you if you go back to private prisons and so forth, the sheriffs used to contract out the prisoners on the chain gangs and everywhere. They would contract out the prisoners' labors. So the government, like, hey, we need to get in on this. So we decide we're gonna establish a prison industry and we make furniture for prisoners and so forth. And like you said, they get the first right of refusal on contracts and so forth. So it's not surprising when you think about, like I said, our country, has many challenges, and then there people have utilized our government to take advantage of various populations. We've suffered. Indigenous people here suffered, and just about all poor people suffer from the greed of corporations. But and the government is no different. When you think about people, a lot of private people go into government and then they think about ways how to exploit it. Even when you think about like this what is it, JPay? I remember, like you used to send people books and literature, yourself and mail it. Now they charge them for emails and phone calls. I remember AT&T payphone used to make $25,000 a day. I mean, yeah, because you think about the collect calls. So there are a lot of people have found ways how to sort of monetize prisoners, and make money off of poor people. And that goes back to your earlier question: how do we reform it? Well, let's stop making money off of poor prisoners, because poor people that are incarcerated, because a lot of their families have to travel long distances to see them. So that's money. Then the payphone all calls are collect. That's money. When they send an email, and if they send a picture of them, then that's additional money. Send stuff on the commissary, they take through JPay, they take a fee from that. So, this is from poor people. So it exacerbates the problem. So when they're out, you only been working 50 cents an hour, you got a couple kids, so you hadn't been able to contribute to that environment. And so there's so many things that can be done to reform the system to make sure that people, who deserve a second chance, because I really don't think, like, well, let me say it this phrase is where I have less sympathy for violent offenders than I do nonviolent offenders. And a lot of the nonviolent offenders, get in, and then it's such a vicious cycle. They have to do things because and then they wind up sort of like never getting out of prison or never being able to reintegrate. So I think there's a lot of things to that we can do, but I think it starts also with us as a community. You got to build businesses in your respective community because a lot of other ethnic groups do that. And yeah, I
Mhm.
think I was reading something. I know we need to probably move on to the next question, but the last point I make is I was reading somewhere a dollar only stays in our community for a couple of hours before it recycles out, and in the Asian community, it's a couple of weeks and so forth.
Mhm.
And I think people like Claude Anderson and some other people have talked about, how we practice economic and and George Fraser. And so there are a lot of people that sort of have given us a sort of a roadmap, but I just think we too focus on we too much of consumers as
Yeah,
opposed to of building businesses and so forth.
yes, sir. I agree. And that was a great answer. Um,
Thank you.
with with your extensive travels to over 40 countries and your deep interest in Africa's development, how have these international experiences shaped your perspective on public administration and policy making?
Okay, so I toot my own little horn there. I've been to 40 African countries. I've been to
40.
100. I've been to 130 countries total, and I've been to all 50 states and all 7 continents. And that's because of my education. It exposed me to understanding the importance of travel. And to go back to your question about how my extensive travel, could you tell, I having a little senior moment. Could you repeat that question for me again?
Okay, yeah, I asked, with your extensive travel and your deep interest in Africa's development, how have these international experiences shaped your perspective on public administration and policy making?
Well, policy making, is top down everywhere. You know what I mean by top down is the people who have the influence and the money, they're the ones make the policy. And a lot of times they've never been in a classroom. They never been in it. I don't know. I'm sure you're young. You don't remember when George H.W. Bush, that's the father of George W. Bush, when he was running for president, he was in the grocery store. He didn't know how much a gallon of milk costs. And so he's making public policy. And a lot of people that make policy don't really understand what the common man and woman goes through. And even in Africa, a lot of the African leaders, a lot of them are elite, and they're as disconnected from the poor people, the challenges that they have. So I think policy making is too top heavy for one, all over the world. Two, far too many people become get aspire to be in the government for their own self-aggrandizement as opposed to actually trying to sort of implement their platform. It's
Mm,
really about them enriching themselves. If you go and look at a lot of people in different government spaces, you look at how much their net worth was before they went in, but and there's also too much money in the system. A regular man and woman can't run for president in a lot of places.
yeah.
I
Mm,
think President Obama raised 1.6 billion over 2 election cycles, but look at Vice President Kamala Harris raised 1 billion in like a couple of weeks. So when you
mhm,
think about policy, and then like a lot of African countries, because a lot of people want to control their mineral wealth and all that wealth, a lot of money flows into those campaigns as well. So policy has to be redistributed to a point where the it has to be, I think, bottom up, because when
mhm,
policy is bottom up, I think we can address a lot of those various problems, because people can tell you what's going on the ground when you sort of like sitting in your big old mansion and you traveling all over the world dining on steak and lobster, at Davos or
yeah.
wherever.
Mhm,
You lose touch, and you get influenced, so much money pours in that you lose focus, because a lot of leaders have started out with the right intentions, but the money comes in. So I think we have to sort of, I think money is one of the main issues in our policy process, and it deprives a lot of us of us being able to live in a comfortable way because so many people pour so much money in, and then only a few people benefit. And I think I would say, it's money. I know that's not a sort of a as that's not a comprehensive sort of answer, but I really do see money as the problem, to be honest with you, in the policy making process all over the world.
Hmm. So you think that it's money and that the powers from the government should be shifted to the people, so it to ultimately be power to the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes,
You
sir.
think
And
in the United States, real quick. I didn't mean to you guys. They made a corporation a citizen. What is that? Citizen United. Well, a corporation could be seen as individual. So that's unlimited
yes.
money. That they
Hmm.
have. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, that was perfect. That was I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Yeah. Our straw mans are corporations. Yeah. Yep. Yes, sir. Is that so? How did you get so heavily involved with Africa, and what inspired you to do so?
I actually when I went to Texas Southern and well, let me go back. I think like in the since I was born in '62, so I'm a sort of like a I saw some of the civil rights movement, although I was young. And then I think we also felt a lot of that vestiges of it as we were older. You still had a lot of people talking about solidarity, brother, and get that education
Mhm.
and work for you. So as I matriculated to Texas Southern, I started to read a lot of like books about like the contribution that many Africans made to the civil rights movement. Like the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, actually graduated from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. He was one of the people. You think about that a lot of them matriculated here to HBCUs, and they helped us in our play. You have like Stokely Carmichael, who was at Howard, but he came Kwame Ture. Okay, so you had all of these sort of like people from the Caribbean and Africa. They were very important. Marcus Garvey, let's not forget Marcus Garvey. President Biden. Finally, we had a president, but we tried to get President Obama to do it, but he wouldn't do it. But President Biden pardoned him. But you think about how great Marcus Garvey, and so as I began to sort of read to answer your question about the leaders like Patrice Lumumba. I know you remember Jomo Kenyatta, the Pan Africanists. Du Bois migrated to. He became so frustrated he moved to Ghana, and so
Mhm.
I began to read about how all these sort of like American intellectuals and how they were connected to African. I started to read about all the African intellectuals, and I don't know if you probably never read about the Bandung Conference of 1955 in Indonesia, where all the African leaders and American leaders like Malcolm X and Colin Powell, a lot of them went there, and Kwame Nkrumah and Chairman Mao from China. They were all there to sort of like talk about how to sort of liberate themselves, okay, from sort of like Western influence. And so I began to read, and I don't know if your audience know that France, because you look at Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, you like, what's going on with them? Well, I don't know if you know that France has a colonial compact with its former French colonies where they had to put 85% of their money in their central bank. And they loan them money from that 85%. They loan them money, and then they create a currency, the CFA, that they can't even
Mhm.
spend in France, but they have to use that currency. And so a lot of them are beginning to break away. And so I begin to sort of read about people like Thomas Sankara, from Burkina Faso. It was used to be called Upper Volta. So I just, my education sort of like I just started to read, man, and like it was something. I forgot who said it, but they said the gold is in the library, and I embraced that. Like people want the jury and so forth, but I began to embrace the fact that the treasures were in knowledge. And so I became very sort of interested in Africa because I understood, based on the readings, that civilization started in Africa. When you think about Mansa Musa, he's richer than Bill Gates and Elon Musk. And when you think about Mansa Musa, you think about the Mali Empire, University of Sankore. And then started to read the pyramid text, the coffin text, the Book of the Dead. And I just started, it just reading just became fascinating to me. But that Africa was the source where everything started, because even Herodotus, who a highly respected historian in history, he talked about like how all the Greek gods came from Africa. He
Yeah.
talked about how, all these things about Africa. I read about the Dogon tribe out of West Africa plotted to start Cyrus before Galileo invented the telescope. Then when I started to think about the pyramids, people talk about Pythagoras' theorem, but his theorem is inherent in the pyramid. And so he didn't invent that. So I began to see how brilliant the ancient Egyptians were, who were black. And something they said that I remember, they said was to be educated, it was to be more godlike. That's what they said. I was like, wow. And then they talked about the Egyptian mystery system, which it wasn't a cult thing, it was the seven liberal arts. And so I began to see how Imhotep was the first black multi genius who built the step pyramid. So that's how I became sort of enamored with Africa and understanding all these African philosophers and just brilliant people, men and women from there. And so and then, like, as I would close on this one, I just thought about how I think it was said was, I think, Queen Nzinga in Angola. I think it was Alexander somebody wouldn't go and fight Queen Nzinga because he was such a fierce warrior. And I think, and
Mhm.
then you think about Benin where they had the woman king who Viola Davis played. I went to Benin, and so you see all these strong stories, and so that's how I became sort of really sort of like enamored with studying Africa, and then so I just wanted to travel, brother, and see. So the books made me curious about it, and when I went there, I fell in love. So because it's such a beautiful country, and the story you get from there is from the media is really distorted in many respects.
Wow. Yeah, that was powerful. What's that
Thank
saying? Knowledge make a man unfit to be a slave.
you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Frederick Douglass talked about that as well.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
So, as the president of the African Chamber of Commerce, what specific initiatives are you spearheading to enhance Africa's participation in global trade, especially through frameworks like the African Growth and Opportunity Act or the African Continental Free Trade Area?
Well, as the Pan African Chamber president, for the most part, we're working with small, medium enterprises to sort of like, first of all, to help them look at the market. That's why I've been working with Mr. Walter Cotton, who basically is sort of guru, for lack of a better word, on sort of like service disconnected veteran on small business. I think he's come up with a genius idea, and he's working with Kevin Ngala, who was born in Cameroon, but he served in the military. And so they found a brilliant way, to I think, mitigate, this if Ogoa does sunset. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you partner with a service disconnected veteran-owned small business in a joint venture, then AGOA, doesn't impact your exports and your imports and so forth, and you don't have to worry about tariffs. But I think even more important, small businesses drive the economy. There are few, super big, but small businesses. And so I think far too often, we go to people for jobs and we don't build jobs in our communities. And so I think it's critical that we build businesses. And then we also in Africa, there's a focus on female entrepreneurship, because in many countries, the boys are always sort of like put first. And sometimes, then the girl basically doesn't have the opportunity to sort of get the education or become entrepreneur. So we try to like build build businesses so that they're prepared to sort of participate in this new initiative. That's one of the things that I'm doing, so they can participate in this new initiative. Because one of the reasons why a lot of the unmet funding that the government has set aside for service disconnected veteran small business owners, they don't have the I guess the knowledge, the skills, or the success to show that they can handle contracts. So we want to match them with African businesses that do have these competencies that the government is looking for, to bring them together. And so what that does, I think it's a win-win for the U.S. and for us. So because we help sort of like build these economies and partner, because we haven't really, China and Russia and a lot of other people have participated and partnered with Africa, but a lot of the mineral wealth, we need to become partners. I say partners because I think a lot of times the African countries have been exploited other resources. We need to become partners with them to sort of like make sure that we're not left out, because China like owns 90% of the mineral of critical minerals and so forth. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to sort of build business and build partnerships and relationships. And then, I don't know if you know, the African Union has voted in their Consultative Act 3Q that the diaspora should become the sixth region should become the sixth region. There are 5 regions in Africa. So
Mm.
they to partner with them for the development of Africa. So I also am the strategic diplomatic officer for the African Union, African Diaspora Sixth Region High Council. So one of my goals is to sort of like bring the diaspora together to work to support the development of Africa and the diaspora. So that's why we're building businesses all across the diaspora and trying to get us to come together, because as an African proverb says, when spiders unite, they can tie up a line. And so the only way we can sort of like address a lot of the things, political things, we always like, oh, President Trump gonna do this, or President Biden or Obama, they gonna do this here. But we can't depend on the political system because it changes far too often. So we have to build some permanency, for lack of a better word, in our communities, and with respect to sort of like not worrying about the policy shifts if we're doing the business enterprise with each other. Because really, Africa has everybody would be poor if it were not for Africa. So
Mhm.
and I'm trying to get more people from the diaspora to see the opportunity, not from the colonial perspective where you want to be extractive and exploited, but to see it from how you should actually is a great opportunity to really do business. And they have beautiful, I mean, you can get your house on the beach for a couple 100,000 as opposed to Miami Beach 25 million. You follow what I'm saying? So there's so much to like about doing business in Africa, but also building business. So you're not as sort of like feeling as vulnerable as you feel as the administrations change. A lot of people get locked out. And it's like that in Africa also. When your political party is out, you out. You don't get no resources. And so that's why we got to start thinking about how do we build some permanency in our communities. And I think you build that through building businesses. Okay, make sure you have great education centers and making sure you stay up on what's going on with like technology. So we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution. And a lot of our schools are still teaching a third revolution, and some of them you still in the factory-based education, with the factories, and so we need to update our skills and our education, the system. So I think that's how I see my goal as the Pan-African president, which we're in like 27 countries, is to make sure that we're preparing our communities for the fourth industrial revolution, which is already here.
Yeah, I seen that, President Trump signed something about a couple 100 billion towards the AI
Yeah,
infrastructure and
500.
built.
Yeah.
hmm So it's the writing is on the wall, and so to simply put, your job or your initiative is to bridge that gap between Africa and America and build out a solid infrastructure by collaborating and partnering
Yes.
versus trying to exploit and just take.
Absolutely. Because I think that, and they have a rightfully many of them feel, even though we're African American, and there's been a sort of like they have us not trusting the Africans and the Africans not trusting the African Americans. So I work to bridge that gap. And then we also need some culture immersion. I work with culture immersion programs also, because a lot of us, because we've been sort of like brainwashed, and the Africans have been brainwashed against us. We go over here like, oh, I didn't know it was this beautiful over here. Like that's because you've been watching too much TV. You have to travel. You can't get your news from just one source, and you definitely can't get your news from accept news, and you never go and visit and see. And so many people are afraid to visit or to even go. And so I just think, we have to sort of knock down those walls between us and put aside, what sort of has been imbued in us through, people that benefit from us, from the fragmentation of the diaspora in Africa.
Yes, sir. You spoke briefly on, China and Russia already, being established in Africa. What opportunities exist for African countries to benefit from shifting global supply chains away from reliance on like China and Russia?
Well, I think they benefit because, they're some of the only ones that are there that are sort of like throwing billions of dollars, but it's predatory in many respects. They give you $1 billion, but you sell $1 trillion asset. Okay, and the U.S. is left behind because it's too busy, in my opinion, punishing the African leaders, which punishes the people. You want to, I think that one of the things I think it's unfair of our country to tell African leaders you can't keep certain leaders as a friend because you have issues with them. But under apartheid, you supported people that actually oppressed many of the African countries in during the Cold War and apartheid, and you keep those friends. So it's like, how you gonna tell me to get rid of my friends when doing my liberation struggle who helped me, so to throw off the yokes of my oppressor? So I'm supposed to stop being friends with them, but you're still friends with your friend. And so I think we have sort of like, I think that's why our policy has gone awry. And I think people, I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think with President Trump. I think President Trump just tearing down a lot of stuff because he wanted to be the one to sort of like come up with new initiatives and strategies. So he'll be known for that. But to answer your question, I think we do ourselves a disservice by not like looking at, because to be quite honest, most countries wouldn't be the majority of countries wouldn't be rich if it wasn't for Africa. I don't think France has any gold. A lot of countries don't have gold or diamonds in their backyard. All the mineral left, whether it's going to your cell phone, everything coming out the DRC and a lot of other different places. And so it would behoove. I know they talk about make America great again. It would behoove, I think, America to do business in Africa, and I think and I think vice versa for Africa to be able to access American markets as well. And so I think it's just good business. At the end of the day, it's just good business to be able to sort of like export and import your goods to various countries. But see, when two countries got a monopoly on like doing business, then I think that shortchanges the Africans because they don't get the good deals. And so I think I think there's a major incentive for Africans to do business with other countries, including America, and I think vice versa.
Okay, how can African nations effectively leverage the duty-free access provided by AGOA while concurrently enhancing intra-African trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area framework?
I think that's a great question. I think you have African Union Agenda 2063, and I think they talk about and even president, and I hope I don't mispronounce his name, but it's not intentional. The president of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and I may be mispronouncing his name, but it's not because I don't respect him, but he talked about, we need to have this digital transformation in Africa as well. And I think, African the free trade agreement needs to really sort of like be formalized by all African countries.
Mhm.
There's some things that they need to do internally, like have one passport in Africa, and I
Yeah,
know, I don't want to get in trouble, get killed, and I think other people got killed. Have one currency. I think they need one currency also, but that's not within our purview, you
yeah.
know, that's far too political.
Hmm.
But I do think, these regional blocks that they have to perform better. Like you have ECOWAS, Economic Community, West African State. You have the Southern African Development Community. You have the East Africa. You have so I know I'm forgetting, but you have these different blocks. And so I think one of the things all the African countries need to formalize the free trade, continental free trade. Yeah, I think that's that right. The continental free trade agreement. They need to formalize that, and then I think they have to, like some of them don't even have commodity systems. Some of them
Hmm.
don't have stock exchange. So I think there are some internal things you have to do. I think the president of Ghana was tasked with developing, something similar to that, so I think you need to do some internal things, and I think this initiative that Walton Cotton came up with regarding service disconnected veteran small businesses collaborate with he called it Afro champions. These champion African companies and business leaders that have done exceptionally well on it coming together in a joint venture so that way, this unmet need that's out there that service disconnected veterans can take advantage of because they don't have the track record. So it's a win-win. So you get to build up American veterans with with this disability that are owners, excuse me. So now they start to do business. They become better at doing business. They get the experience, so then they can do their own. So because even in America, building small and medium enterprises is very important and then the African companies they get to the sort of like because they partner with us, if AGOA does sunset, there's opportunity. They bypass a lot of the tariffs and taxes because they're working with us. We're in a partnership, then we get to create jobs here in America, and they create jobs there, and we get exports and imports going. And so I think it's a win-win. I think that's a strategy, and I think that was pretty genius idea that but also I think what's also great about the initiative because I know our country is moving away from DEI, and
Yeah.
this is not a DEI initiative. This is veterans who have served their country, that have made sacrifices, and that have received, many of them in the line of duty have a sort of a disability. So this is a great way to sort of kind of like sort of help a constituency that has served and that has given a lot to our country. And then you go and you look at, the African company, then you could also work with them to help that population. And I just think, and then, but also, I think improve relations between Africa and the United States as well. I think there's a lot of things in a lot of ways this initiative can benefit both countries. And so I think that's one way when you think about a goal because it may sunset and it probably gonna sunset. I wouldn't be surprised, like I say, if President Trump doesn't come up with a new initiative because he's a businessman. I know he has a way of doing things, but I
Mhm.
think they're very strategic, and so I don't think people should be as alarmed because at the end of the day, you know, he's a businessman, and I think there'll be opportunities.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Price. Could you just give me a brief a brief description on your relationship with Mr. Cotton? Because that's how we got our introduction to each other.
Well, I actually was introduced to Mr. Cotton through my former dean, Dr. Joanne Rowe. She told him, he wanted to do this initiative in Africa. She said, "Well, Dr. Price is the man you need to connect with." Because I see him on panels with African presidents. And because I work with Princess Okansi out of Ghana, we used to do this. We do this U.S. Africa Presidential of STEM AIMBA Summit. It's a presidential summit where we focus on STEM, artificial intelligence, and MBA, because we believe that like I told you, education is important, and so I believe that most degrees should have a STEM designation because 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 AI can be a policy analyst now. You used to be
Yeah.
you can grab all this stuff and AI spit out it. You might need humans to kind of review it sometime, but it's getting better and better. And so a lot of jobs are gonna go away. So we need to so a STEM based degree is gonna help you stay, I think, competitive if you want a job. You need to, to me, you need to have a STEM degree or you need to be an entrepreneur, you need to be a business owner. And as a business owner, you still need to understand how STEM impacts your STEM
Mm-hmm.
focus like technology impacts your business as well. So I actually met him through Dean, Doctor, my former dean, because because I'm really good friends with the President Mandela's poet laureate, Zalanda McKeevy. Traveled the world with President Mandela, but he's also the president director general of the Institute of African Royalty. It means he's the acknowledged leader of the 5 regions of the continent, and he works with every king and queen in Africa. And so, and I know a lot of people like that. And so she said, "Well, Dr. Price can help you with your African tour." And so we're going to be doing a lot of great things. So that's how I met Walter. So, he's really a brilliant guy when you think about, he's a strategist. He's sort of when you think
Mm-hmm.
about business and you think about entrepreneurs, like everybody's not going to be a business owner. But I think we need to, I think entrepreneurship should be a part of every degree program because I think an entrepreneurial employee is a better employee and a smarter employee. But I also think once they're entrepreneur employee, they get to a point where I think they can become a business owner because they thinking like an owner when you're entrepreneurial. So, but I know I kind of went long, but that's how I met Mr. Scott through my Dr. Dean Joanne Rowe, my former dean, brought me to his attention.
Thank you, Dr. Price.
Yes,
No,
sir.
that was great. That was great, man. And I love to hear about, two powerful minds collaborating and coming together. And I think, that's what we need to do more, you know, the great minds to come together and collaborate to create things like this. And, I believe this to be something very revolutionary and a game changer. Could you leave our audience with some closing remarks, any words of advice or any words of wisdom?
I will pick up interject what you said. Lerone Bennett Jr. said an educator is either a revolutionary or an oppressor. And so I think we have to be revolutionary in our thinking in the sense. And I ain't talking about like violent stuff, but I'm just talking about revolutionary, like how Walter Scott saw something and like Booker T. Washington said. So what Walter did, he sort of captured what Booker T. Washington said. He said, "Do a common thing in an uncommon way." Okay. And so what was that last thing you said? I was gonna tie it into it. What was your make your final point? And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna remember my point. I got another senior moment.
No, no, that's okay. No, I was just saying that this was revolutionary
Okay,
and
I got it. And so to your point about collaborating, just think if the breeze of W.E. Du Bois would have collaborated with Booker T. Washington or Marcus Garvey. Du Bois had the keen intellectual, but he didn't like how Marcus Garvey did his thing. But you think about it, if he could have helped him put an intellectual footprint on Marcus Garvey, genius and brilliant. Marcus Garvey was genius and brilliant. just as much as Du Bois, but Du Bois was kind of
Mhm.
elite. So just think if he would have helped Garvey or not criticized Booker T. Washington and helped Booker T. Washington. Think about how far along we are. So I think to your point, we have to see the genius in everybody and be able to accept that you may some of the things about them sort of rub you the wrong way, but you think about how their genius can help us with the larger goal and a larger objective as opposed to a little personality quirk or philosophy that they have that you can't move beyond. We have to subjugate our differences to achieve that goal, and that goal is to make sure that all our families are taken care of and that we're able to provide for ourselves and we're able to sort of like be able to express ourselves and explore the things that we hope to achieve, have an opportunity to at least attempt to fulfill your dreams. And I think if we work together and not sort of like criticize and fight each other and look at the genius in a lot of the ideas we have and separate some of the things you can deal with and accept the genius, I think we would be so much farther ahead, actually.
This has been a great interview, Dr. Price, and thank you for your time and thank you for your wisdom. I really appreciate it. Uh, yeah, this really has been a great interview. So with that being said, guys, I'm Ratwan Hill. This has been Dr. Price. And this has been another segment of See You at the Gas Pump. Until next time, guys. See you later.
All right, take it. Thank you.